which I feel in my bones, between what the strongmen of the mid-war period in the 1920s were doing. They never hid their ill intent, and still they gathered power and support amongst populations that had lost hope. So this hopelessness that had begun in earnest in 2008 with our generation's 1929, the failures of the center-left, the failures of the left, including myself, has paved the ground for these people to advocate for misanthropy and win elections.
Gillian Tett, is Sir Alex Younger right? What do you think?
I think he's absolutely right, and I would agree with Yanis in that the way I'd put it is we are indeed looking at a gigantic back to the future moment, back to the 1930s in many ways, and there are three defining elements of what...
Sorry, when you say back to the 1930s in many ways, that is a big statement to make. What do you mean specifically?
What I mean by that is really two particular things. Firstly, we're seeing the rise of what I call the three Ps: populism, protectionism, and extreme patriotism, otherwise known as nationalism, which is what we saw after 1929. And we're seeing all three of those elements appearing, not just in America right now, but also in parts of Europe. Secondly, though, and one of the biggest and most jarring shifts of this year, has been an explosion of what might be called geoeconomics and hegemonic power, dominant power politics. Albert Hirschman, an economist, wrote a brilliant book about it just after World War II, analysing that interwar period, when he talked about the incredible importance of hegemonic power politics. Big dominant countries using economic tools like trade policy, not so much just to promote their economies, but actually as a tool of political power games. And this bundling together of politics, economics, trade, military, cultural, tech issues, all into one gigantic transactional game where you're putting chips on the table to bargain with each other and threaten each other. That is a hallmark of what the Trump administration has brought into geopolitics this year. I suspect it will continue next year. And that was absolutely what we saw in the 1930s, and which the post-World War II era tried to move away from.
Yanis, haven't Donald Trump's interventions on foreign policy been successful?
Well, not just successful, triumphant from his perspective. But allow me to cast a more broad gaze upon 2025 and do it in terms of what I consider to be three momentous events, global events, where Donald Trump was a key player, maybe the key player. The first upset or momentous event is Russia's victory in Ukraine, not so much against the Ukrainians, but against Europe's leaders. Because for almost 4 years now, the European Union and NATO have been engaging in a perilous double game. They committed rhetorically to a Ukrainian victory, which were materially unwilling to bankroll. And now we have a decisive Russian victory, which of course was mitigated, was propagated to a large extent by Donald Trump. The second momentous event...
I'm going to pause you if I may. I mean, we have not got a peace agreement, a peace proposal. You're describing Russia as having been triumphant in Ukraine, though.
It has been triumphant over the Europeans. The Europeans have no strategy for war. They are not prepared to bankroll a war that they prefer to this kind of peace that Putin and Trump are engineering. And they have no plan for peace either. So that is a decisive victory by Putin and, with Trump helps, over the European leadership, the European Union and NATO. This is my assessment. But there are two other dimensions or upsets that supplement this, and Donald Trump is central to that. The second one is that I think, maybe you will find this also controversial, China has won the trade war against the United States, first by weaponizing its dominance over rare earths, and then defeating the chip embargo through the mobilization of its technological machinery. And the third upset, which completes this trifecta in which Donald Trump is central, is Donald Trump's victory against the Europeans when it comes to the tariff war. Remember the scene where Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, is being humiliated in Donald Trump's golf course in Scotland, effectively committing herself to things that she can't deliver, like 700 billion of investments from Europe to the United States, and a complete collapse of the European position on tariffs. If you take these three victories by Putin, Trump, and President Xi of China, then I think you begin to see my point of view that 2025 is going to stay in history as a very pivotal year, where the old global order has been well and truly torn asunder.
Yeah, I want to come back.